Welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about rose. Particularly rose fragrances that I own, where rose is a fairly predominant note in the fragrance. It's a fairly new love for me, and it's kind of weird to call it a love, but it kind of is now. I really do enjoy wearing rose fragrances. So I thought I would go through them with you today and just show you what rose fragrances I have in my collection. So let's just jump right in. First of all, this is only a decant, this one. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I would consider buying a full bottle. It might be a little bit controversial given that I have always said that I guess the sister fragrance to this, it's not really the sister fragrance, but it kind of is, was not to my taste. Well, at least not something that I felt I could wear, but I do like this one, and I have been wearing the decant. I took this on holiday with me recently and I did wear it a fair bit, and I know Matt really liked it, so I don't know. It is Atomic Rose by Initio. So this fragrance is quite a green rose, but at the same time the rose is really sweet but also actually quite bright. I guess compared to Delina, which is the other fragrance that I was referring to, this isn't as bright as that, but it's definitely still quite a bright rose from, by my standards. But I actually really like this, and I am finding it to be quite wearable. Whether or not I want a full bottle of it, I don't know. I did have an opportunity recently to buy a partial bottle of it, and I passed on it, just because, again, I'm really trying to be quite mindful about what bottles I add to my collection now, especially after the pain of going through that declutter recently. And I'm still in the process of decluttering. I'm finding more every day that I sort of think, okay, that can probably go. So yeah, I mean, watch this space. There'll probably be another declutter video coming up, but I'll probably do it a lot better than the last one. The next one I want to talk about is Rose Pivoine, and this is by Nicolai. This is only a travel size. This is quite an airy, citrusy rose. And at first I wasn't sure if I really liked it, but now I think I could definitely wear it because it is getting quite warm now with the weather. We're coming into summer, Queensland summer, so it's also quite humid, and yeah, this is the citrus in this just really lifts it. I mean, it feels citrusy, but I don't know if it actually is citrus. Maybe it's fruit, but it's just really light, and there's some woods in there. It's very light wearing. I'm actually really liking this at the moment. I am planning to actually gift this on to a friend of mine, so I'm trying not to wear it too much, but I did just want to make sure that I had a good understanding of it before I passed it on. So that is Rose Pivoine by Nicolai. The next one is Lipstick Rose by Frederic Malle. I only bought this bottle this year. I picked it up as a partial bottle from a friend of mine at a really good price, and I actually really like it. I don't know if I could wear it that much in summer, but I probably could wear it lightly in summer, but definitely I did quite enjoy wearing it a couple of times over winter this year. And I mean, obviously the rose is very prominent in there, but then there's also a lot of iris as well, and which just gives it that real makeup-y vibe. But I really like that, and it's very, very strong, so I don't need too much of it. But yeah, I really like this one. I think I will be keeping this for quite a while because I think I need definitely more time to familiarize myself with it. I have to confess, when I do wear this, even though I really love the smell, I feel like the fragrance is wearing me a little bit rather than me wearing the fragrance. So I think that's really just in my head. You know, I don't think that's necessarily the case, and I think that's always in your head whenever that happens, actually. But I feel like I probably just need to boost my confidence a little bit more to be able to wear this one, you know, without feeling like I'm standing out. These are in no particular order, by the way. I thought about putting them in an order of least favorite to most favorite, but it really just depends on the day. So, you know, some days, you know, lipstick rose would be the furthest thing from my mind. Other days, it's what I gravitate towards. So the next one is Merveilleux by Wik&Co. I'm sorry, you're probably not going to be able to see that very well. This one, again, is another iris rose fragrance, but the rose in here is a lot more muted than, say, in the lipstick rose. It's not as dark as the one in the lipstick rose, and the iris is a lot more woodsy and powdery. So I think there's sandalwood in here as well. And so this is a lot more airy. It's very, very light. So again, would be a really good one for summer. I have worn this a few times already since spring kicked in, and I really enjoy it. It probably doesn't last all day, but I don't mind that. I just find that this one is extremely feminine without being really in your face. So yeah, I really like that one. That's an Australian brand too, by the way. The next one I'm not sure if I'm going to be keeping in my collection indefinitely. I still have more time to spend with it to just be sure whether or not I want it or not. I picked this one up against my better judgment without, you know, really investigating it first. So it was a blind buy basically. And I have just been finding that some of the fragrances from this line, whilst I used to really love them, I've sort of moved away from them a little bit. So, you know, buying from this line is no longer a fairly safe thing for me to do now without smelling them first. And that is because they are quite sweet. So they were really good when I sort of went through a really sweet phase about 12 months ago. And now I'm sort of finding that maybe they're a little bit too sweet and I don't really pull for them anymore. But this one is Parfait de Roses by Maison Lancome. Still an absolutely wonderful fragrance, don't get me wrong. It's just that my tastes are changing and I feel like I want something less sweet again. So I'm sort of going back to a phase of wanting less sweet things. And I already have quite a lot of sweet things in my wardrobe, so I'm sort of thinking maybe I can do without keeping this one, but haven't really decided yet. I mean, this is a massive bottle. It's 100 mils. And what am I going to do with 100 mils of this stuff? But getting back to the fragrance, this is a really sugary, sweet rose fragrance. I can see it would be very mass appealing. A lot of people really like this fragrance, and also the presentation is absolutely stunning as usual with Maison Lancome. It's sugar and rose, basically, is what I get from this fragrance. And so I'm not, I like it, but when I put it on, I do sort of feel like I need to, I feel like I'm getting a toothache, basically. I also did have Roses Vanille by Mancera, and I had to get rid of that because that was too sweet for me as well. I just found that to be kind of similar to this, actually. That to me was very much sugar and rose. Or vanilla, very sweet vanilla and rose. This is more sugar and rose and less so the vanilla. But anyway, I digress. I'm talking about fragrances that aren't even in my collection. That was Parfait de Roses by Maison Lancome. The next one is one that I definitely do really love, and that is Ms. Dior Les Parfums by Dior, obviously. This is sort of an ambery rose, a sweet, powdery, ambery rose. It's very dense. And there's other florals in here too, I think, which make it a little bit lighter. So it's not super dark or anything, but yeah, this is a really beautiful fragrance. I've talked about it before, so I won't go into it too much detail. I do have another bottle of this because it has been discontinued and I've only got a little bit left. So I did buy another bottle while it was still available. I think you can still pick it up if you are so inclined. This is very different from the rest of the Miss Dior range. It's not nearly as youthful as the other fragrances in the line. The next one I only have a little 9mm mini of, but this is Velvet Rose and Oud by Jo Malone. You're probably not going to be able to read that label, sorry. I really like this one a lot. I've kind of ignored, I do have a couple of Jo Malone fragrances, but I've never really, I just feel that they're a little bit overpriced for what they are. I love the scents. I think they smell amazing, but they're very, very pricey for really what they are. But this one I really, really love. So I'm still only a third of the way through this one. So this one I think I will be upgrading to a full bottle when I finish this. So this is a kind of a much darker rose than the ones I've talked about so far. And the rose is very velvety. So the name just suits it to a T. The oud is not skanky or barnyardy. It's very woody. So it's, but the wood or the oud in here isn't super, super prominent. It just gives it a little bit of depth, but, and probably a bit of darkness. But the rose in here really is like, it has a texture to it. And it is velvety, and I don't know how they did it, but it is really, really beautiful. It's sweet, but not really, really, really sweet. Oh, I love this one. I'm definitely going to get a bottle of it, maybe. The next one, I really like this fragrance. I know it doesn't get as much love as it used to, because it has been reformulated, but I personally still adore it, and I really like the reformulation. I don't think it was horrible. So this is Stella by Stella McCartney. This is a very cool rose. It's haughty. This isn't approachable, this rose. But it's great in the warm weather because it has, I don't know, it sort of makes me feel cooler because it's not warm and cuddly and ambery like most of my other rose fragrances. And it's not heavy and sickly or jammy. So, I mean, it is sweet, but it's not super jammy, and it smells authentic. You know, it smells like an authentic rose. I really, really enjoy it. It's kind of watery as well. So I quite like this. I also used to have Flora Botanica by Balenciaga, which is another watery rose that also has mint and I think a cannabis note in it. I prefer this. I found, I don't know what it was about the Balenciaga. It was a beautiful fragrance, Flora Botanica, and I know it's very popular, but for some reason, I just didn't feel like me when I wore it. So I feel like I'm the haughty one, okay? That's the one that I need. So the next one is another hard to get one, actually. You can still find it occasionally it pops up somewhere. This is Essence No. 1 Rose by Elie Saab. Now, my friend Daniel first got me onto this one a couple of years ago. And by the time, you know, I know he was talking about it a fair bit, and I looked for it and I couldn't really find it. And I thought at the time I was thinking, oh, I don't really like rose anyway. Why am I trying to get a rose fragrance? So I decided to just stop looking. And then earlier this year or late last year, Claire from Smurfy Girly started talking. She got her hands on a bottle of this and she was talking about it a lot. This is one of her favorite rose fragrances. And it sort of got me thinking about it again. And of course, by then I was sort of into rose. So I decided to have another look for it. And I was lucky enough to find a bottle. And so I snapped it up immediately. And yeah, this one is very, very nice. It is sweet. So I guess I was thinking that this might be more like this, and why I would go and buy a 100ml bottle of another fragrance that I already have 100 mils of, thinking that they would be similar, I don't know. Don't ask me to be logical about these things, but this is kind of what I was hoping that would be, I think, in my mind. And so I really just should have stuck with this one. So this is not sugary at all. It is jammy, it is sweet. It's slightly powdery. And there's something else in there too. Is it iris? I don't know, but there's something kind of woodsy or earthy about it as well, which I really, really like. So I think this just, where Parfait de Roses kind of misses the mark for me, this is kind of spot on. But again, it's hard to get, so I'm really sorry about that. Now, the next one, and I'm not saying it's the same as the Elie Saab, but it kind of has a similar vibe for me. It doesn't smell the same, but if you really wanted this and you can't get it, this one might be worth a go, and it is Rose Flash by Tauerville. Andy Tauer obviously being the perfumer. This is another really jammy rose. It's quite sweet, but there's amber in here, and there's woods in here, and there's a resin in here that sort of tones down the sweetness just a little bit. This is actually my scent of the day today, and I absolutely adore this fragrance. So look, again, not the same, and not really even similar, but they satisfy the same craving for me, basically. Although this one gets a little bit more powdery in the dry down, and this one sort of more ambery and resiny. So I love it, love it, love it, love it. The next one I didn't consider to be a rose fragrance at first, until Pep from the Sentinel was talking about it, and he classifies this as more of a rose fragrance than an amber fragrance. And at first I was thinking, what are you on about? Because I always saw this as being a peppery, ambery fragrance. This is Ombre Nuit by Maison Dior. I don't know, I must be very open to suggestion on things, because now that I smell it, I definitely get a rose. It is a dry rose. It's not sweet, not jammy. It's dry, and then it's got the amber and, you know, a very peppery, sort of spicy amber behind it. But I have to say, maybe because my nose has become more attuned to rose fragrances, because what have I got here so far? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 fragrances already, and I still have a few more to go. And, you know, that a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have even had one fragrance that was primarily rose. That's a lie. I did have a rose fragrance in my collection. What are you on about, Cherie? Anyway, so this, as I said, very dry, also a little bit haughty, maybe a little bit stuck up, a little bit posh. It's definitely a dressed up formal fragrance. I would say as much a rose fragrance as an amber fragrance. So I think Pep still thinks it's more rose than amber. Maybe I've pared it back to maybe 50-50. I think, you know, the amber still plays a prominent role in here, but it's not a sweet, powdery, you know, cuddly amber. It is dry and peppery and spicy and woodsy. So Ombre Nuit by Maison Dior. Am I drawing a long bow there? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to decide. The next one is one that I have had in my collection for a very, very long time. This is Rose Essentielle by Bvlgari. Now this particular bottle here is the original formulation. I bought this when it was released. I can't remember what year it was now. But I feel this is turned. Someone on an earlier video suggested that perhaps if I put this in the fridge, it might revive it a little bit. I don't know how that works, but I'm probably going to give it a go, because this is a really gorgeous, or was a very gorgeous fragrance. I did manage to get my hands on a newer bottle recently. It's not quite the same though. It is a little bit lighter. It has obviously been reformulated. It doesn't pack as much punch as this one used to. So yeah, I might stick this in the fridge and see if I can get it to come back a little bit. I did not look after this at all. I used to keep this in the bathroom, which is obviously the worst place you could keep it. I probably exposed it to varying temperatures and all sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I had this when I was in my 20s, so I really didn't take very good care of it. So this one I will take much better care of because it has been discontinued and it is getting tricky to find. You can still find it, but it's getting tricky to find. This is it's sweet, but it's also quite green and crisp and airy and a little bit spicy. I really like it. It's quite a mature fragrance, but it's also, I mean, I felt really grown up when I was wearing this in my 20s, put it that way. So it's maybe not as mature as something like this, but it's also not as ambery and dense as this one either. So I used to wear this to work. This was my work fragrance for a good couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. And I always actually got compliments on it. Back then I didn't even really think twice about getting compliments on fragrances, and I don't really think twice about it now either, come to think of it. I don't wear fragrances to get compliments, but it's nice. It's nice when people notice that you're wearing a nice fragrance. I think this next one people are going to argue with me on, but that's okay. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected, but I feel like I get rose in this one. I'm pretty sure there is rose in this, and it is very powdery. Habanita by Molinard, sorry. It is very powdery and there's lots more going on in here, but I really do get rose out of this. And it's really bizarre because I'm terrible at picking out florals in fragrances, but I really like this one. It's kind of dark, but also not. I mean, I find powdery fragrances generally, unless they're like a really dense amber, I find it hard to describe a powdery fragrance as being dark, because powdery fragrances to me are, well, they remind me of, you know, my mother. So I think that the Molinard, you know, it's not predominantly rose perhaps, but I find the rose for me does stand out. And I think that, you know, the rose plays a substantial part in the wearing of this fragrance on my skin at least. So yeah, that's Habanita by Molinard. Okay, so the next one is possibly my favorite discovery for this year. It's not a new fragrance, it wasn't released this year. In fact, I had a sample of this in a discovery kit for a while and I completely ignored it because I was way more focused on two other very prominent fragrances from this house, and they were kind of what I'd put my attention to from that discovery kit. And so this one sort of sat unnoticed for a while, and then I don't know what made me try it actually. But one day I decided to go back to that discovery kit and try something else, and this was the one that I chose, and this is Une Rose Chypree by Andy Tauer. Absolutely spellbound by this fragrance. I don't know what happened. I thought Au Cœur du Desert was the pinnacle for me of the Andy Tauer range, but I think this one just pipped it off its little post. I'm obsessed with it. Really obsessed with it. Although I am having a bit of a Chypree moment as well at the moment. So this is a Chypree fragrance, and I'm not going to say it the way Amina taught me to. Chypree. Oh, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, this is definitely a Chypree fragrance. It's not going to be for everyone. It's definitely not a safe blind buy. Not that anything is a safe blind buy. Nothing is a safe blind buy, people, okay? Do not be upset with me if you blind buy something that I talk about on this channel and then you don't like it, because I don't even blind buy things anymore, apart from Parfait of Roses. And look how that turned out. It was a disaster for me. So don't blind buy things, okay? Just make sure you sample them first. You can get samples. It's possible, I promise. This opens actually quite green. Well, it opens very much like a Chypree would. It's quite green, it's a little bit sharp, it's very dry and straw-like. And I didn't really get much of the rose at all in the opening initially, actually. But then the dry down comes, and it is it's still a Chypree fragrance in the dry down, but it is so velvety. It's just so luxurious, and I feel really, really important when I wear this and it dries down. So this is by far, I don't know, I'm obsessed with this right now. So, I mean, ask me in another 6 months' time, you know, I'm sure that something else will come along that, you know, I suddenly become completely obsessed with. But I think this one is always going to be in my collection, and it just smells divine in the dry down. And there is definitely, you can definitely notice the rose. I notice the rose more in the dry down than I do in the opening, but yeah, it's very dry, so it's not a sweet jammy rose, so don't start thinking that you might like it just because you like rose. If you don't like Chyprees, you may not like this, but that's definitely my favourite. It's my favourite rose at the moment, but it depends. I mean, of course, it always depends on the mood you're in on any given day. Some days I really want a sweet rose. Other days I want something cool, and some days I want something spicy, and so it's hard to say. But I'd say the two towers are my favorite rose fragrances in my collection at the moment. So there you go. I'm pretty sure that I covered all of the rose fragrances in my collection. I can't promise that I didn't miss any though, because again, I have quite a few fragrances, but if I did, I may come back and add to this list at a later time. However, if there's any rose fragrances that you would recommend that I try and get my nose on, then let me know in the comments, because yeah, I'm quite enjoying rose at the moment. It's not so bad after all. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you want to see more like this, where I just sort of focus on a particular note in the fragrances that I have, then let me know, and let me know which ones you'd like to hear about. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. See ya.